I'll give her a fame, a heart, and a piccolo and a cane. Nice little cat, you can stick it up, you can hide round. Nice little cat, you can stick it up, you can hide round. Played a little old down, and her made a little old down, and her head went round and round. Ooh, she thought I was okay, but he stepped off that train with a heart and a piccolo and a cane.
Hello, welcome to Much Ado About Gaming. I'm gonna back up here so that I'm not right in front of the camera. Hello, my name is Jessa Rose, and welcome to Much Ado About Gaming. Today on our streaming show, I'm very excited to say that we have Geoff Engelstein, the designer of Super-Skill Pinball 4K, here with us today. Today is a special episode because we are celebrating the upcoming release of Super-Skill Pinball 4K, which is going to be hitting stores tomorrow, Wednesday, September 30th, so that's really exciting. Hi, Geoff, how are you?
Hey, Jessa, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on our show. Sorry, hold on one second, guys. I gotta make sure everything's awesome. Okay. How excited are you that this is finally coming out? It's finally, releasing. It's finally in the world. I know I keep leaning forward awkwardly. Please ignore that.
Yeah, no, that's the one thing they don't tell you when you start designing games is that, it's everything takes longer than you think it's going to. So yeah, when it finally does get out there, it's very exciting. And this is a pretty quick one. WizKids has done a great job of getting this one out there, but I first presented this to Zev almost exactly a year ago. So I've had some games that take 2, 3, 5 years to come out from publishers. So this is it's always exciting when it comes out.
Yeah, so it must be a nice relief that you're not in that waiting game of like, oh, is it coming? When is it releasing? Do I have to, when do I get to talk about this?
Exactly. I'm very bad at keeping secrets and stuff, so yeah, it's always good for me when that burden is off.
Cancel. I just turned on my Alexa by accident. So, you've talked a little bit about this before in other interviews and on other streams. Can you tell us a little bit, just for our audience, what inspired you to design the game?
Yeah, I'll actually throw in a few other details that I didn't include. I was saving a few details just for this interview, Jess.
Oh, awesome.
So this is it. But there was, I always kind of kept my eye on roll and writes and stuff like that and sort of the new things that are coming out. And, I had some ideas, but I didn't feel like I had anything that would really kind of contribute in a meaningful way to advancing, something new and exciting that was coming out. And, one day I was actually playing pinball. I have a pinball machine at home. I have a Hobbit pinball machine, and cool. It just kind of came to me in a flash that way back in the 80s, and this is a detail I haven't talked about, way back in the 80s there used to be this thing called Games Magazine, which had a lot of word puzzles and stuff like that. And one thing they had back there was a thing called a pinball maze, where you got points for moving around different, like it was just bumpers and you kind of moved around and followed lines for that kind of connected things. And it was also a Sid Saxon had sort of a pinball game that and I was doing some research on him. And so just all these things just kind of came together, and I was like, wait, a roll and write based around pinball could be really neat. Moving between the different features and just scoring up points as you went, and it changed quite a bit from my initial concept, which was to have paths that had numbers on the paths, and the dice would control what paths you could follow to get to things. And then I switched it ultimately where the numbers were on the features.
It's really interesting. Just a moment, TJ. Just so you know, we had some technical difficulties with Geoff's camera, so he is just audio, but he is here. He is with us, as you can hear. He's got some really interesting things to say. I didn't actually expect you to tell us that it started as a roll and write, because you've talked about how you've had pinball's been part of your life for so long, I figured the idea would have started as, oh, I want to make a pinball game, and then somehow along the way it turned into a roll and write. But to hear you say it started as a roll and write, that's really cool because it seems like that's one of the thrusts of the game that everyone really loves.
Yeah, and my designs tend to be more on the thematic side. You know, I teach game design at NYU, and you know, one of the questions that we always go over with the students is, you know, what do you use for inspiration? What's kind of your guiding light when you're designing a game? And for me, it's not really mechanisms. It's not theme per se. I mean, I focus on the experience. I focus on the kind of the emotions and the stories and things that players are going to get to tell after they do it. So, you know, for me to kind of get the, you know, the idea of having a way to simulate, kind of emulate pinball, and the feeling you get from pinball is being a little bit out of control, but, you know, trying to get those combos and just, you know, a lot of the elements of it, you know, kind of just fit naturally into sort of a roll and write scheme. So.
Wow, that's really interesting. So, tell us a little more about what the overall design process of the game was like. What, you know, how you got from that moment of realization playing your pinball game at home to, you know, what we have, the completed game we have today.
So really, there was a couple of different things that came in. So one of the earliest decisions that I was messing around with was this idea of where you roll 2 dice, and those are shared by everybody, and you pick one to use. Each person can pick their own one to use. That actually came from one of my favorites, old-timey games, by which I think it was like 1998 or 2000. But that's old-timey now. It's this game called Take It Easy.
Okay.
Take It Easy, the one person, everybody has the same set of tiles, and one person draws a tile, and everyone has to take that tile and put it onto their play board wherever they want to place it. And ultimately you get points just based on, you know, how your tiles connect to your adjacent tiles. And I just always like that core mechanism because it's really simple to explain to people, and it's so easy to scale up. You know, you can play with 2 people or 100 people, and it's the same thing.
Right.
So I like that idea of having the 2 dice and choose one from very early on. But one of the real early things I was trying to do, and this is why the development of the game actually took as long as it did, was in the beginning I was trying to do it as a pad of paper. So much like your traditional roll and writes, everybody would get a sheet of paper and would be writing on that, and that's how they would do it. So the initial designs, currently it's on, those of you who haven't seen it, the final design is on a dry erase, a laminated board, and it comes with the dry erase markers.
Right.
Now it's more natural. If you complete a set of targets, you erase the targets. That wasn't the case in the original versions. You would actually just, if you filled in all the targets, those targets just weren't available to you.
Right.
And the way that it worked when you had 3 balls is I didn't want to have any erasing on the sheet. That I thought that was just going to be a mess. So there was actually, next to each target, there were actually 3 different spots that you could color in. There was a circle, a diamond, and a hexagon. And each ball had a special shape that you could use for that ball. There was a circle ball, the diamond ball, and the hexagon ball. But it just, when you looked at it, it was just a mess. I mean, it played fine, but just, it was really, really just, it just was difficult to just look at it and look at the board and just see what was still available for you to do. And I played with that for literally a year with the pad of paper and trying different things and trying to get the mechanism to work. And finally, I don't even remember how I got the idea, but finally, at some point I was like, wait a second, why don't I just laminate this and make a dry erase? Which, you know, in retrospect just seems like super obvious, right? But I wasn't even sure if publishers would be willing to do that for it. So I contacted, you know, some of my friends in the industry. It's like, hey, you know, if I had a roll and write, but it had to be laminated and not a pad, would you be cool with that? And everyone's like, yeah, sure, that's not a problem, as long as, you know, the cost fit in. We'd be totally fine with that. So once I made that shift, and actually being able to erase the target sets when you completed them and get multiple targets actually radically improved the game also, as well as improving it just from a user interface standpoint.
Right.
So then we were just kind of off to the races, and it finished itself up really quickly once I kind of got over that mental hurdle. So, you know, sometimes these little stupid things can just hold you back, but that's a little bit of some of the design elements.
Yeah, and then you have that flash of genius of like, oh, well, this solution seems so obvious. Why didn't I think of
Yeah.
this in step one?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's really cool. So what about designing the mini games for each table? You have like the feats of strength on Carnival, the run mini game on Cyberhack, or the Disco Pinferno mini pinball game on the back glass.
Yeah. Well, those were kind of based on pinball, actual pinball machines that I had some experience with. So there's been many pinball machines that have had that bank of targets where you have to hit them progressively. They're in a little chute, and you've got to hit them one at a time. So one of the things that that I tried to build into each of the machines was sort of a narrative arc.
Right.
I didn't want it to be just where each ball, it's just you're starting from scratch again, and ball 2 is the same as ball 1, and ball 3 is the same as everything else. I wanted it to change and grow. And so having the feat of strength with the multiple targets where you're progressing through, you physically can't finish that in one ball.
Right.
If you can finish it one time the entire game. You can theoretically do it twice. I've never actually seen anybody do it twice, so I'm throwing the gauntlet down to do it twice.
You heard him.
Most people do it once. So that gives you a little bit of the longer term strategy. Like, do I want to go for that, or how do I time it so I've got multi-ball going on while I get that feat of strength? And then so same thing with Cyberhack with that mini game, is I wanted to do, first off, I took inspiration from pinball, mainly from there's a lot of machines from the 90s particularly that have these games that you play on the back glass, that they actually have like little video modes, they're called, in pinball machines usually. Like there's one on some of the Star Wars ones, you're steering left and right and trying to avoid obstacles and stuff like that. So I wanted to do something like that, and but it's actually an interesting design space because around is just somebody rolls 2 dice and players decide what they're going to do with them. And that's the turn, right? So the mini game needed to do the same thing. And it needed to be that some people were in the mini game and some people could be not in the mini game. So that basic core of rolling 2 dice and going from there always needed to be there. So with Cyberhack, naturally with the back glass game, a great fit just seemed to be doing a run on the corporation, and the idea of having that you're trying to collect data and bonus points from that, but at the same time there's the push your luck mechanism of avoiding the trace. And that also, we played with a lot of different systems of, you take the lower die versus the higher die, you multiply dice, you subtract dice, you add dice. There was all kinds of different things we played with, but the way we ended up with it, where you add the dice for your good thing and you subtract the dice for your bad thing, ultimately really worked out for that. And then for the mini game for the for Dance Fever, which is a second little mini table.
Right.
Again, the main inspiration of one of my favorite tables when I was a kid was Haunted House. Is a pinball machine that actually has, in the main playfield, there's a secondary playfield below it, like it's like the basement, the cellar, the dungeon, whatever it is, and your ball can actually go down in there, and the flippers work a little bit differently, and it's kind of fun. So that was the inspiration for having a second little glass. There's also, which are friends of ours have, there's an NBA game, an NBA pinball game, which actually has a little shoot the basketball through the hoop mini game, which is on the back glass. We have like flippers vertically on the back glass, and you got to shoot a pinball.
That's really cool.
I took inspiration from that one as well. So
that's really fun.
There's just so much creativity out there in pinball. There's Magna Save, and there's little platforms that you tilt, like in Indiana Jones. You can use the flippers to tilt platforms to try to maneuver through stuff. There's what's that game? There's a game with like the talking ventriloquist dummy. There's just so many different crazy, they're called toys in pinball parlance, that people put in there that, if we, come out with additional tables, then, I think there's a lot of options for things that we can use.
For viewers just joining us, my name is Jessa. I have Geoff Engelstein here. He is the designer of Super-Skill Pinball 4K, which is releasing tomorrow. We are having some technical difficulties with his videos, so he is just talking to us via audio, but he's answering questions. Any questions you have, please feel free to put them in the chat, and he will be happy to answer them. So my next question then is, and you kind of touched on this earlier, but What other ways is the final game kind of different from your original vision?
Um, well, one of the main design features was multi-ball.
Mm-hmm.
Multi-ball I always kind of wanted to have in it.
Right.
And this is kind of a small design detail, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. Was Originally there was 3 dice. So normally you roll 2 dice and you pick one.
Right.
And then if you had multi-ball, you threw an extra die into the mix,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to use 2 out of the 3 dice. But it was going to be a different color, so the people who weren't in multi-ball had to use the red colored
Right.
dice, and people who could multi-ball could add in a bonus black die or whatever
Mm-hmm.
it was. But I just found it was a little bit too easy.
Mm-hmm.
Actually turned out to be way easier to kind of control multi-ball, and it just didn't feel like multi-ball.
Yeah.
Again, I talk about the experience of design.
Uh-huh.
And so just kind of backed off and added in an idea of, now in multi-ball, you still roll the 2 dice,
Mhm.
but you must use both.
Right.
So it's great because you get double points for
Mhm.
everything while you're in multi-ball. So it can be a ton of points,
Mhm.
but you have that feeling, again, at least when I play pinball, when I play multi-ball, I always feel like I'm totally out of control and I'm just
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to hit it. Anything I can
Absolutely.
hit, right? I'm not making any shots at all. I'm just doing stuff. And so having to use both dice and assign one to one ball and one to the other ball, just really, when we tried it, just very nicely captured that feeling of being on the edge of control. And when it works, and just sometimes you'll just lose that one of those balls faster just because you just can't keep juggling them. So I like
Yeah.
that. The other thing that underwent a lot of changes, and again, it kind of went back to that experience, was bumpers. The bumpers. Originally, the way that the bumpers worked is there's a section on the table where you go into the bumpers, and the way the game works, and generally for those of you that haven't tried it, is there's on most tables there's 4 zones, which are, it's like a horizontal stripe of the table. So in the top of the table there's the 3 targets you go through, and then the next zone is the bumpers, and then the next zone is the targets, and at the bottom of the board is the flippers. And I'm doing hand motions, which you can't see, so just picture my hand motions in your mind. And each round the ball needs to move down to the next zone. That's which is because gravity makes the ball go down. And originally his bumpers were exactly the same way. So if you were on a bumper, you had to move down to the target. You couldn't move in between the bumpers. So they look like bumpers on the table, but they didn't, when I would show it to people,
Right.
they didn't really feel like bumpers. In fact, this was even, when I had first, after I was working in development with WizKids, that was actually one of the big comments that your team brought to the table was, hey, the bumpers don't feel like bumpers. What can we do to make them feel more like bumpers? So originally I had it where there's 3 bumpers on most of the tables with different numbers on them, and you color the numbers in. And so originally I made it that you could move from a bumper to either of the other 2 bumpers if you could, if there was a space to color in. And that felt a ton like bumpers,
Right.
actually. But it was like, it really lengthened the game quite a bit because you could stay up in those bumpers for turn after turn after turn after turn after turn.
Absolutely.
So went back to the drawing board and said, and tried a few different things, and ultimately ended up with a similar kind of a concept, but you could only move clockwise around the bumpers, the 3 bumpers. You couldn't move to any bumper. And that was kind of a nice compromise between it feeling like bumpers and yet not dramatically lengthening the game.
Right.
But then it also enabled me to save that the bouncing between any bumpers I was able to reuse as a bonus. So now it stayed in the game, but now you have to activate that as a special mode.
Right.
You get double bumper points, and you can move between all the bumpers. And it's a lot of fun when you get it, and you feel like you earned it. So the fact that it lengthens the game a little bit doesn't really impact it as much. So,
Right.
So that was also a really big change, just to kind of trying different things and balancing the experience of it versus the duration of it.
Awesome. So what would you say if you had to say what your personal favorite aspects of the game are? What are those? And give me 1 second, because I'm just gonna put some info about the game on the screen to help our viewers who may be just tuning in.
Cool.
But yeah, what are your favorite aspects of the game? What's your favorite table in the game? Tell us.
um,
You have to pick a favorite child. Which child?
yeah, really. Well, as my kids know, I'm always happy to do that. I think I like the Cyber Hack table, and I'm also a big fan of Dragon Slayer.
I like
which is
Dragon
The
Slayer.
role-playing game one. I think
Yeah.
Dragon Slayer gives you the most control over what's going on, and that was another thing that I added more and more as we were working on the tables. There's more ways for players to control what they're doing. One of the last features we added was the nudging of the table.
Yeah.
Which in the end was one of my favorite rules. But that was another WizKids suggestion. It's like there should be some way to bump the table.
Yeah.
And that's just, it gives you more control, but it's also, again, kind of a little push your luck thing that's in there. So, yeah, I mean, that's my favorite table. I would say Dragon Slayer if I was forced to pick one, just because there's so many different strategic paths you can pick on that.
Yeah.
You can concentrate on different types of spells in your spell book, and they synergize with each other.
It's one of my favorites too, I think.
Yeah. And favorite feature of the design, I actually just said it. I'm going to go with the nudging. And multi-ball, I guess those two, because they just do such a nice job of simulating their real life counterpart.
Right.
And it's so easy to teach those rules because everyone's like, oh yeah, of course, that's how it should work. If I had to guess how it would work, that makes total sense. So it's just so it's nice when things click with people like that, because it's easier for them to play the game, and it just it enhances the whole experience.
So a lot of designers, and even in pinball games, sometimes they like to add little Easter eggs into the game for fans to find. Do you have any little hidden things you want to tell us?
Design-wise, there's not much that's really hidden in there.
Right.
But the artists actually added more than I even realized. I was just blown away. I don't know. Somebody tweeted about it on the WizKids. I don't know if you do that or somebody else.
That was me.
That was you. But it was just pointed out to me that, like, on Dragon Slayer, there's a big knight on there with a shield. And the shield has on it a bumper, and on the bottom is two flippers. And I never even noticed that. For all the art approvals that I did, and all the reviews of the art and all that stuff, that was never reviewed. So yeah, there's a lot of nifty stuff that the art team put in there that I'm now only really beginning to appreciate.
There's actually another really cool thing that the artists put in there is there are pinballs hidden on every single table. There are pinballs hidden in the art. Carnival, I think, has the most. Carnival has a ton of them, but every table has them. And I went one day because when I was drafting all those posts about, like, what are the different cool, fun facts about each table, one of the things I did was I started looking for all the pinballs, and some of them are hidden, but it's so cool to find them.
Yeah,
so,
and that's one of the things that's really nice about this project is that you could have, 4 totally different art styles, and you could really get into the art because it's both thematic. It works. It's a pinball machine. You expect pinball machines to be laden with art, so I love that part of it.
Art is honestly one of my favorite parts of pinball machines. I just we have an arcade near me, and we went for Christmas last year. And just seeing, like, all the art on the different machines, even the licensed machines, all the art they do for that, it's so cool. And it's always so creative.
Yeah, there's some very, very cool stuff that's out there. And you can buy, I've seen people decorating with just, like, back glasses or even, like, tables. You can buy, like, the play field surfaces just on their own and hang them up. They're
that's smart.
Definitely works of art in their own
Absolutely.
Their own right.
So now I've played a lot of this game. I'm not the best at this game. What are your tips from the designer on how me or anyone else who plays can improve their score and really, rack up those points?
Well, first off, one of just the interesting facts about the design, and it mainly comes back from those bumpers again, is that there actually is no theoretical high score. Mathematically, there is no limit to what the scores can be, because you can bounce around the bumpers forever. I mean, it becomes increasingly unlikely, but it's possible. So, you can always try to improve your score, no matter what you've gotten. But the key kind of design aspect of it is timing.
Right.
Okay, you've got to kind of For example, multi-ball, as I mentioned, doubles your score.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can to do multi-ball when it gets close to the end of a round, and
Mm-hmm.
a round is like when you're going to lose your ball, and
Right.
you know you're getting to the end because you're filling flippers. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
people that they will trigger multi-ball really early on,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be a mistake. You want to try to time it. Set up, leave your target so that maybe there's just one
Mm-hmm.
left to get multi-ball. And then when you lose your ball, then when
Mm-hmm.
you start up next, you can start it and get almost the entire ball as multi-ball.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's bonuses. Every table, there's two different ways to lose your
Mm-hmm.
ball in the round. One is just for it to drain down the middle of the table.
Right.
But there's also two out lanes, the 1 and the 6.
Mm-hmm.
You lose it on a 1 or a 6 all the way on the outside.
Right.
You can score pretty significant bonuses. You can
Mm-hmm.
double that, and if you have multi-ball and you've doubled it with another bonus, you can actually get 24 stars, which is a lot of stars when you
Mm-hmm.
lose the ball versus losing the ball down the center. So people don't always focus on those, and sometimes it can be worth it to lose your ball early
Mm-hmm.
just to lock that in.
Right.
Or when you're getting a skill shot, which
Mm-hmm.
lets you guarantee a die roll in the future, if you take a 1 or a 6 skill shot
Mm-hmm.
and save that just for that occasion, that can
Right.
also sometimes be helpful.
Mm-hmm. That.
So those are the kind of the biggies. Is try to time it and set yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
You can also skip zones. Like if you're planning on going for a big bumper bonus, like I
Yes.
described the bumper bonus, you don't have to mark off bumper boxes. You can
Mm-hmm.
skip the bumpers and move right down to the targets.
Mm-hmm.
So if you keep those bumpers clean and just focus on getting the bumper bonus,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll be able to get that many more points when you go back up there.
Yeah. No, I actually, that wouldn't have occurred to me, so I'm glad you mentioned it. Because next time I play now, I'm going to try that. So, I don't think I asked this yet. Maybe I did.
Okay.
What is the one thing about this game that you're the most proud of?
I mean, just kind of on a high level thing,
Mm-hmm.
I would say the way that a lot of the reviewers have said this, which has made me super pleased,
Mm-hmm.
is just that it feels like a natural fit for pinball,
Mhm.
right? That a lot of the ways that things work are the ways that you'd expect them to work.
Right.
So that was a real big goal for me, and I'm
Mhm.
happy that I captured that. If you on a micro level, kind of on an individual mechanic level,
Mm-hmm.
I really like the nudge mechanism the
Mhm.
best, because it's out there. It's kind of like the devil on your shoulder,
Right.
it's whispering in your ear. It's like, yeah, you could just nudge this a little bit, and
Mhm.
you'll get that extra bonus, and maybe you'll survive, and maybe
Mhm.
you won't for the next turn. But at least now you can get that immediate gratification of
Right.
hitting the thing that you wanted to hit.
Mhm.
And so I really like the choices that gives to players.
Mm-hmm. That, I totally agree with that. So now is the question I mentioned to you earlier. So I'm hoping, I don't know what that end of that sentence was. What is your favorite WizKids game, other than the ones you've designed?
They got a lot of really nice, great games in the catalog.
Mhm.
I mean, I of the ones that I've played recently,
Mhm.
I really enjoyed Flotilla.
Okay.
There's a lot going on there, and that's one that I would like to jump into and try
Mhm.
again, because I felt like it was about halfway through the game when all of a sudden it all crystallized. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I see what's going on here.
had that
Now I
same
know
moment.
how to win.
Mhm.
So I really enjoyed Flotilla. And on the light side, I really like Rock Paper Wizard.
Mhm.
I think that's a fun, quick little game.
Mhm.
I think there's an expansion for that, which I haven't had a chance to try yet.
Yep. A Fistful of Monsters. It's really fun. It's really
There you
cute.
go. Yeah. So those are two.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, in the current climate, it's been a little bit more challenging to play.
Yeah.
But the game, well, I mean, yeah, Rock Paper Wizard is
Mhm.
needs a lot of people, but oh gosh, now I'm blanking on the name, and I apologize. The massive space trading game with like internet.
Sidereal Confluence.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sidereal Confluence. Yeah, I only got to really try that
Mhm.
once, but I'd love to really dive in and get a big group together, especially with that beautiful new edition.
The remastered edition is stunning. It's
Yeah.
coming out soon, and we're so excited about it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to see if I
Yes.
can convince you to get me a chance to get this guy on that one.
We'll talk.
Because this is gonna be another game that I'm gonna own multiple copies of.
Uh-huh. I totally get it. It's great. I can't wait. I can't wait to be able to bring it on the show and show it off because it's really cool. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the thing that I'm sure some people saw on our social media and are like very excited about. We have a contest. Geoff is awesome and has agreed to sign a free copy of Super-Skill Pinball 4K to the winner of the contest. The way the contest is going to work is that we want to hear what everyone's favorite pinball memories are. Just one paragraph, 6 sentences. What is your favorite pinball memory? Shoot that in a message to us on Facebook Messenger, and you could win a free signed copy of the game. The contest is open to U.S. residents only, but and it closes on October 6th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But please, enter your favorite pinball memory. Geoff, what is your favorite pinball memory?
I have so many, but
give us an
I'm gonna
example.
go when I was in college, there was an 8-ball deluxe machine in the basement of our dorm, and unfortunately, that really negatively impacted on my academic performance. I spent a lot of time on that machine and knew all the ins and outs of it. So I'd love to be able to do a pool table, like an 8-ball machine in this format as well, the Super-Skill format. I think it'd be fun. But I just remember one game where sometimes you just have those moments where you're just totally locked in, and I was hitting every shot and everything was just perfect, and it was like an over an hour long game on one quarter. It was just an amazing magical moment. So
awesome.
I'll go with that one.
Really cool. So yeah, if you have a memory like that, please enter our contest. Like I said, just send us a message with your favorite pinball memory on Facebook to enter. And we will announce a winner next week on October 7th. Geoff, thank you so much for being on the show and talking to me today. Sorry we weren't able to get you on camera, but just hearing about the design process of the game and everything has been so cool and so interesting.
Yeah, no, again, I really appreciate you coming on and giving me an opportunity to talk about it. It's been a fun project, and the whole thing's been great.
So guys, if you would like to pick up Super-Skill Pinball 4K, it is hitting store shelves tomorrow, September 30th, so definitely head on over to your friendly local game store. Yay! Tomorrow! We do encourage you to shop local, but we understand that it might be a challenge to find a friendly local game store due to the current situation. So you can also head to shop.wizkids.com, where we have the game available there for ordering as well. And also, please be sure to check out the WizKids YouTube channel tomorrow, where V Muse, who runs our Mini Mayhem show, will be showing off new products from the Warlock Tiles line. So definitely check that out. It's going to be really cool. She's amazing. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you again, Geoff. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great week, everyone. Bye.